Welcome back to Eurofantasy 2024. This will be my updated draft, and I made several changes from the first one you saw last week, and there's much more content headed your way, so be sure to check out all the Eurofantasy content on my channel. I've also uploaded Use Your Fantasy content, and also for FPL every single season I cover that fantasy format as well. You can see the league code on screen on YouTube, and for those listening on the podcast, the league code is JCRHjQ. There is an auto join link in the description below, so be sure to join that and also see if you can win the FPL Dylan mini league. And if you want to see a chip strategy guide and also the best players in each position, budget players, no matter what it is, maybe best differentials, be sure to let me know down the comment section below. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. In the how to play guide, I discuss all the rules in detail, and we start off with 100 million in budget, and we get a 5 million increase for the knockout stages in match day 4, and also in terms of transfers we get 2 per match day in the group phases, and then afterwards we get 3 transfers for the quarterfinals, 4 for the semi-finals, and 5 for the Euros final. I also talk about both boosters in detail, and I'll do the same thing in a chip strategy video and podcast as well. But let's start off this one, the updated draft, with the goalkeepers. We have several decent options at 5 million, and Diogo Costa is one of them. He was man of the match in the Portuguese Cup final against Sporting, making 7 saves and helping Porto lift the trophy. And across all competitions, he kept 17 clean sheets out of 45 games. And more importantly, for Portugal, he has started 8 of the last 12 matches under Roberto Martinez, the new manager, and he has kept 6 clean sheets in that time frame. But Rui Patricio and Jose Sá have also been handed opportunities, and Diogo Costa has kept 11 clean sheets in 20 Portugal appearances overall, with 13 goals conceded. His ownership is 8%, and of course he's priced at 5 million with a decent group of Czech Republic, Turkey and Georgia, and that suits all chip strategies. Whether you use both chips in the group stages, you save one of them for the knockouts. I think Diogo Costa ticks all boxes, and if you were to double up on any defence in the Euros, I think Portugal could be one of the very best ones based on the quality of fixtures and the defensive record, which has coincided with the appointment of Roberto Martinez and some favourable fixtures in the qualifiers. I think they'll keep more clean sheets this time round in the Euros. I think they only kept 1 in the previous Euros tournament, and they had a very tough group there with France and Germany, and I think Hungary as well. This time round it's much more favourable, and I think Diogo Costa will do very well and be one of the highest scoring goalkeepers in Euro Fantasy. Now the second option between the sticks is Lunin, who was in my first draft. His ownership has gone down slightly to 17%, but he's still the 3rd highest owned goalkeeper in the game, only behind Magnan and Jordan Pickford, who is the most template goalkeeper option at the moment. And Lunin has been incredible for Real Madrid this season, keeping 12 clean sheets out of 31 matches. This video and podcast is recorded on Saturday morning, and of course tonight we'll have the Champions League final, and all reports indicate that Lunin won't start that game, and that's a bit harsh, you could argue, with the season he's had. But Courtois will come in between the sticks for that Champions League final, but Lunin will be the starting goalkeeper for Ukraine now. He has started the last 2 games for them, and before that it was Trubin, who was maybe not the undisputed number 1, but he was the first choice, and now it's definitely Lunin with his performances for Real Madrid. And on the international stage, he has kept 5 clean sheets out of 11 matches overall, and he's priced at 4.5 million, which makes him a very attractive proposition to say the least. And his opponents are quite decent, especially match days 1 and 2 in Romania and Slovakia, but Ukraine round off the group stages with Belgium. So I think Lunin is very good for the first 2 matches. After that, for match day 3, you'd ideally go for another goalkeeper. If you are using the wildcard or limitless in match day 3, you wouldn't go for Lunin as part of your 50-man squad. But one 4 million goalkeeper who could be a starter for a top team in the group stages is Sales. In 5 of the last 6 matches for Belgium, he has started over Casteels, and with Courtois not called up to the Euro squad, that opens up the door for a 4 million starting goalkeeper for Belgium. So let's keep an eye out for that situation in the friendlies just before the Euro start. That could definitely be very interesting. Sels doesn't have a great record this season, with only 4 clean sheets out of 35 matches for Nottingham Forest and Strasbourg, but for Belgium, his chances will be much more higher in terms of keeping a clean sheet and also getting some very good returns in Euro Fantasy. He has actually kept 5 clean sheets overall during his time for Belgium in 8 games, and he's considered 5 goals in the process as well, with 2% ownership and a group comprising of Slovakia, Romania and Ukraine. So watch out for sales. He could be a starting goalkeeper at just 4 million, but we do have another defender or defensive coverage for Belgium who's also priced at 4 million that could start every single game for the Red Devils. I have several differentials in my defensive line, and Harry Maguire is one of them, with 5% ownership and a price tag of 5 million. He has been very impressive for England on the international stage, and Gareth Southgate always calls him up. He's one of the first names on the team sheet, and I think he's a good option with his attacking threat, which I'll delve into very soon. But for Manchester United this season, he scored 4 goals and registered 2 assists in 31 matches. And in FPL, he got 4 FPL assists. So some of them might not have been official assists, but he did get the points in FPL there. Now, he missed the last 4 Premier League games of the season and the FA Cup final against Manchester City due to injury. But Harry Maguire is expected to be available for Matchday 1, and he has 7 goals and 2 assists in 63 games for England. That's a very impressive record for a centre-back, and he has kept 5 clean sheets out of the last 9 games for his country. And with that group of Serbia, Denmark and Slovenia, it's not the easiest of groups, but I also think it's quite maybe favourable, I'd say, for England. They're expected to top it, and you would expect 2 wins at the very least, and possibly 2 clean sheets as well. Of course, Serbia and Denmark can't be underestimated, and Slovenia have some top players in their ranks, but England should win those games. And with Harry Maguire costing 5 million and with that attacking potential, I think he could offer tremendous value, and he could be a better option than Jordan Pickford when you're looking at them comparatively compared to other options in their respective positions. But you could also double up on England defensively with Pickford and Harry Maguire. Now, I'm going for a defender from a host nation, and that's going to be Jonathan Tah, who has started 7 consecutive games for Germany, and he could be a ball recovery machine. But I would prefer Mittelstadt if I knew for sure that he's going to start every single game, as he scored once in just 2 appearances for Germany, whilst Jonathan Tah has no goals and no assists in 23 caps, which is obviously not a good record at all. But for Bayer Leverkusen, he's actually done very well in terms of goal scoring, with 6 goals and 1 assist in 48 games across all competitions, with only 1 loss in all of those matches, and only 2 yellow cards, by the way, for Germany in 23 appearances. So I think his disciplinary record is quite decent, but let's wait and see if he gets booked in Matchday 1 as part of the FPL Dylan curse. But his group comprises of Scotland, Hungary and Switzerland. So I think that's a fairly tough group. I think Hungary and Switzerland are quite underrated, and Scotland can cause problems, but Germany should top the group on paper, and I think they could be one of the dark horses in this tournament. Moving on to a more template pick now, and I did discuss him in the first draft as well. I'm not saying he's locked into my team, but I do think he's one of the best defenders when you look at ball recoveries, goals and assist potential, and clean sheets. And that's going to be Joao Cancelo, forming part of the first defensive double-up that I've actually talked about in either my first draft or this updated draft in this video and podcast. I think Joao Cancelo is the best Portugal defender, but he's also the most expensive at 6 million, and his ownership is 21%. He registered 4 goals and 5 assists for Barcelona in 42 matches, but one concern I do have about him is the yellow cards. He did get booked 8 times this season for Barcelona. He produced an assist in the final game of the season against Sevilla, a 2-1 win for the Catalans, and he's got 10 goals and 6 assists in 51 appearances for Portugal. That's a very impressive record, with 2 goals in his last 4 appearances, and if he can translate that into the Euros, he's going to be a very popular option indeed. And his group comprised of Czech Republic, Turkey and Georgia, as mentioned earlier. That's a good group, and I think the Portugal defensive double-up could really work out. I actually wouldn't mind doubling up on England and Portugal at the same time, but you would argue England are a bit more proven in these competitions defensively, although England have never won the Euros before, and Portugal did back in 2016 as well. Now, the Belgian defender I was talking about who could make it into my final team is, of course, Woutface from Leicester City, and he doesn't have a great record in terms of goals or assists for Belgium. In fact, he's got 0 goals and 1 assist in 14 appearances, but for Leicester City, he scored twice in the Championship, featuring in 46 games across all competitions, and he has 9 starts out of the last 12 games for Belgium. That is obviously very encouraging, and we could see a scenario where both Woutface and also Sells start at the same time, and both of them are 4 million. And in that scenario, I'd actually double up on them defensively, because that opens up the doors to spend more money in the midfield and forward line, where you're going to get a higher ceiling and also potentially have more captaincy options on each day. But defenders are still quite decent in UCL fantasy, World Cup fantasy and Euro fantasy because of ball recoveries. Don't underestimate them. And Wout Faes might not score any goal or get any assists in this tournament, but he could get ball recoveries and give you 6-7 points in any given match day, which could be very crucial indeed. Now, the final defender I'm going for is another template pick. His ownership is rising, and that's going to be DeMarco. And in fact, his ownership has gone up to 16%. He is priced at 5 million, and he produced 14 goal contributions for Inter Milan this season, helping them win 2 trophies in Serie A and the Supercoppa Italiana. And he has started 4 of the last 6 games for Italy with 3 clean sheets and 1 assist as well. His group is actually quite difficult. After Albania in matchday 1, it's Spain and Croatia. There could be some draws in there, but in terms of clean sheets, you'd probably argue that Italy don't have a great chance in matchday 2 or 3. So that's going to be very tough there for DeMarco, but his attacking potential and the ball recoveries compensates for that, and that's why he makes it as part of this defensive line on my updated draft. Another England player and another injury doubt is Bukayo Saka. Just like Harry Maguire before him, he has produced 20 goals and 14 assists in 47 games for Arsenal, and he missed the last game of the season due to injury, but Arteta stated that Saka will be fine for the Euros. And I know a lot of you will be tempted by Foden and Bellingham, but in terms of the international stage, Saka has a better record than both of them for England, with 11 goals and 7 assists in 32 matches. To kind of give you a comparison, Bellingham has 3 goals and 5 assists in 29 appearances, whilst Foden has 4 goals and 8 assists in 33 matches. Not a massive difference, but I think Saka has been more consistent on the international stage. He's gotten plenty of Player of the Match awards, which could also be very crucial in Euro Fantasy. You are awarded 3 points when you are awarded the Player of the Match. And in terms of FPL, Saka was the 3rd highest scoring midfielder with 226 points, and that's consecutive seasons scoring over 200 points in FPL. He has never scored at the Euros, but he delivered 3 goals in 4 World Cup matches and was one of England's best players in that tournament. In the Champions League this season, he got 4 goals and 4 assists in 8 matches. His ownership is 13%. His price tag is 8.5 million with a favourable group once again. So I think Saka could be quite an underrated option, and you can go for 2 England midfielders and go for Bellingham and or Foden as well. But I do think Saka is more consistent for England, and I would probably favour him over the other 2 at this moment in time. But next up is a very template pick in Wirtz, who has 42% ownership and a price tag of 7.5 million. He has had an incredible season. I think he should be right up there in the Ballon d'Or rankings, easily in the top 10, with 18 goals and 20 assists in 49 appearances, and Bayer Leverkusen won 43 out of 51 matches, only losing once in the Europa League final. And of course, Wirtz won the Bundesliga and the German Cup. But despite his incredible club record, he's only scored once for Germany in 16 games, which came against France recently, but he's also delivered 4 assists in that time frame. So I think he can step it up in this Euros tournament, and this could be his breakthrough on the international stage. And his group comprised of Scotland, Hungary and Switzerland, as mentioned earlier. I think 2 or 3 Germany players is definitely the play for matchday 1, but I'd be a bit careful because, as I mentioned, their group doesn't have the easiest of opponents. I think all of them are quite underrated, especially Hungary and Switzerland, who can give the toughest of teams very big problems indeed. Now, the 3rd midfield I'm going for is not a great option overall in terms of what he's done for Liverpool this season and in terms of his goal scoring or assist record when you look at both club and country combined. But he is in incredible form for Hungary. And of course, I'm on about Dominik Szoboszlai. Very difficult name to spell, maybe to pronounce as well, but his ownership is 15%, and he produced 7 goals and 4 assists for Liverpool in 45 games. He had a great start. Then he kind of faltered, I think, after October, but I do think the potential is certainly there. He's only 23 years old after all, and he produced 99 points in his debut FPL season. And for Hungary, he has 12 goals and 5 assists in 40 matches. And most importantly of all, if you look at his recent form, he hasn't blanked in his last 5 matches for Hungary, with 5 goals and 3 assists in that period. And his group obviously has Switzerland, Germany and Scotland. So that doesn't look great. And you'd probably argue that the best time to have Szoboszlai on paper is matchday 3 against Scotland. But I do think he can do something against Switzerland and or Germany. And he is the talismanic figure for Hungary. Now, the fourth midfielder is someone I've discussed quite extensively in FPL and Euro Fantasy in recent months. He has been incredible in this latter part of the season, and if he can translate this form to the Euros, we could see probably the best midfielder in the game. And I'm on about Bruno Fernandes, who was really clutch for Manchester United, helping them win the FA Cup against Man City with a great assist in that game and a fantastic performance overall. And in the Premier League, he was stepping it up time after time again, and he produced 9 goals and 7 assists in his last 15 matches for Manchester United and 77 FPL points in his last 10 Premier League starts, averaging 7.7 points per game. 4 consecutive seasons producing over 150 FPL points, and for Portugal, he has 20 goals and 19 assists in 64 games, with 3 goals and 3 assists in his last 5 matches for Portugal. He should be the main penalty taker when Cristiano Ronaldo is on the pitch. He's got a very favourable group, and I think going for Bruno Fernandes is probably the play if you want a Portugal attacker. I actually prefer him over Cristiano Ronaldo up front, or any other player like Bernardo Silva, who's actually quite underrated for Portugal. He can get several goals and assists, but Bruno Fernandes is the one for me, especially given his form for Manchester United. Now, the fifth and final midfielder is another one I'm not entirely sure about, but I have to say, if I'm comparing him to Szoboszlai, I probably prefer Szoboszlai at the moment, and I'm talking about Çalhanoğlu, who is my Arda Güler replacement, with Çalhanoğlu being a bit more nailed on than Güler, who might be in and out of the team or start a game and get 50-60 minutes, which isn't ideal in terms of fantasy format. But Çalhanoğlu amassed 15 goals and 3 assists in 40 appearances for Inter Milan, and he was a key figure for them, and also when they reached the Champions League final the season beforehand. He has 18 goals and 15 assists in 84 caps for Turkey, and he scored in the last match for his country, a 6-1 loss to Austria. His ownership is 5%, his price tag is quite accessible at 6.5 million. He faces Georgia first, which is very appealing, and that's why going for him or Güler could definitely work out for the first match day, but then it's Portugal in match day 2, and if you are using the wildcard or Limitless, I wouldn't recommend Çalhanoğlu there, at least based on the fixture difficulty, and in match day 3 they round it off with Czech Republic. So it's a decent group for Turkey in match days 1 and 3, but in match day 2 they are massive underdogs against Portugal, who are one of the favourites to win the tournament once again. So that is my midfield 5. Some alternatives to consider are definitely De Bruyne, Bellingham, Foden, I'd say Trossard given his form for Arsenal, Bernardo Silva, Gundogan, Sane, Barella, Kvaratskhelia for match day 1, Rodri, Shaqiri, Güler, Xhaka and Musiala. All of them are on the watch list. It's a very long list, of course. I'm going to narrow it down as we get closer to match day 1, but I'm very happy with this midfield 5, and it's definitely stronger than what I talked about in my first draft. You have to make compromises in Euro Fantasy, and in order to strengthen the midfield, I had to get rid of a premium forward for Dovbyk, but at 7.5 million, I think he can offer tremendous value, and he had an incredible season for Girona, winning the La Liga Golden Boot, and he capped it off by scoring a hat-trick in a 7-0 win in the last game of the season against Granada, 25 goals and 10 assists in 41 games across all competitions, La Liga, Copa del Rey and Champions League qualifiers, and for Ukraine, he has 8 goals and 3 assists in 25 appearances, with 2 goals in his last 4 appearances. 6% ownership means that Dovbyk could be a nice differential, and his price tag is obviously very accessible for the vast majority of you, and he has Romania in match day 1, Slovakia match day 2, and then Belgium to complete the group stages. I think for the first 2 match days, Dovbyk could certainly do the trick. Against Belgium, of course, you wouldn't fancy his chances, but some of these players that I'm talking about, like Bruno Fernandes, Dovbyk, whoever it could be, even Saka, I think these players can do it against any opponent, and that's why even in the tougher games you can keep them and they can deliver for you in your Euro Fantasy team. But the next forward is Lukaku, who I talked about in the first draft. I know he has a bit of a reputation of missing big chances, and he did it in the last World Cup for Belgium, but his overall record for the Red Devils is incredible, with 83 goals and 17 assists in 114 matches, and in his last 10 games for Belgium, he has 15 goals and 2 assists. So I think Lukaku is a very underrated option. His ownership has gone up to 11%, but it's still quite differential compared to Mbappe, Harry Kane and the like. Speaking of which, I'm picking between those two for the final forward slot, and I'm currently going for Kylian Mbappe and balancing the attack. I'm not going for that England attacking double up, but of course I'm not ruling that out. I could go for Saka, Bellingham, Foden, at least one of those, as well as Harry Kane up front, but I would rather have a balance in the forward line, and for England, I prefer a defensive double up over an offensive one, but you may disagree, and I'm very happy to hear your thoughts down the comment section below. But Kylian Mbappe, any stat you read out for him is going to be incredible, and he is close to joining Real Madrid after the Champions League final. He has 48 goals and 31 assists in 77 appearances for France, and for PSG this season, 44 goals and 10 assists in 48 games. Incredible numbers. He will always deliver. He hasn't scored at the Euros yet, but he's going to do it very soon, potentially in Matchday 1. I think it's only a matter of time before he breaks that kind of drought. And overall, there is a reason why his ownership is 76%. That's very template, to say the least. No one else comes close in terms of ownership. I think Harry Kane has 50%. He's the closest to that. But Mbappe is by far and away the template option. And going without him can be very risky, but it is possible. If you were to go for Lukaku, Harry Kane, and let's say Cristiano Ronaldo or a Dovbyk or Havertz, I think you could compensate and tackle Kylian Mbappe. But in terms of other France attackers, only Griezmann springs to mind. I'm not a big fan of their midfielders, so if you were to go for a France attacker, don't go via Mbappe, who has a decent group of Austria, Netherlands and Poland. Of course, Olivier Giroud in his last Euros tournament could be decent, but Mbappe is levels above in terms of consistency. And also in terms of starts, you could see Giroud coming in and out of the team, in my opinion. I could be wrong about that. Giroud typically is a starter for France, but in this tournament, you could see a bit of a change in that kind of dynamic. Mbappe is obviously going to start every single game, either up front, but most importantly, on the left-hand side. Let me now show you the starting 11 for this squad and discussing substitutions and the captaincy, because some of you might be new to this fantasy format. I'd highly recommend you check out my how to play guide. All of your queries will be answered and you will know everything you need in terms of Euro fantasy going into match day 1, and you won't have any big questions or miss out on key aspects of the game. So let's now head over to that section and show you the starting 11 for this updated draft. Between the sticks, I would go for Lunin and a back four of Woutface, Maguire, Jonathan Tah and DeMarco, a midfield three of Saka, Wirtz and Szoboszlai, and a front three of Lukaku, Mbappe and Dovbyk, and everyone on my bench plays on the 18th of June in Diogo Costa, Bruno Fernandes, Cancelo and Calhanoglu. So if we toggle this by date, you can see that everyone plays on the 18th of June on my bench. What you want to ensure is that those that play on the 14th of June from either Germany or Scotland are in your starting 11, and really the ideal way to set your team up is to have those playing on the latter days of the match day on your bench, and you can bring them on for your low scoring players who have already played, and that's the way it works. But you can't make substitutions and bring someone on who has played already, and that's why you want to ensure that those on your bench haven't played yet and will play later in the match day. And the same goes for the captaincy, where I can captain Wirtz on the first day, and if he blanks or doesn't perform to the standards I want from my captain, I can then switch it. And on the 15th of June, as an example, I've got either Szoboszlai or DeMarco to choose from. Let's say in this example, I'm going to go for Szoboszlai against Switzerland. And then on the 16th of June, I've got plenty to choose from. I'll probably go for Bukayo Saka in this case. And remember, the previous captains will not have the points doubled because you're switching the captaincy, but you don't have to substitute that player out when you're changed to captaincy. You can simply switch it, as I've done just now. On the 17th of June, I can go for Kylian Mbappe, and on the 18th, I can bring on a Portugal player and then captain them as well. So you can make a maximum of 4 substitutions, bring on Diogo Costa, Fernandes, Cancelo and Calhanoglu for 4 of your lowest scoring players in your starting 11. Let's say everyone returns and you don't need to make substitutions, then it's up to you to make a decision. Do I substitute versus 5 points and bring on Bruno Fernandes? I probably would in that case, but that isn't set in stone, and that's where you have a few dilemmas beyond the deadline going throughout the match day. But you can't make transfers within a match day like you could in World Cup fantasy, so there aren't major loopholes as we saw in that fantasy format. Check out everything you need to know in the how to play guide, which I released very recently. But in this updated draft, my captains would be, as I discussed, probably Wirtz on the 14th, Szoboszlai on the 15th, I'd say Saka on the 16th, Mbappe on the 17th, and Bruno Fernandes to round things off. But this is an updated draft. It's not my team selection. Things aren't set in stone, and you could see more changes in future drafts, and of course, the team selection and the deadline stream on the 14th of June. Be sure not to miss it by smashing the like button and subscribing to the channel. Let's try to get this video to over 200 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 24,000 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon, the Championships Discord server, Euro Fantasy League, Draft Hound, as well as Spotify. And leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to supporting the channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Matchday 1 and the rest of the Euros tournament. And I'll see you next time.